We are joined by Evan Solomon, Minister of Artificial Intelligence and Digital Innovation. Great to see you, Minister.
Great to see you as well.
We have heard warnings that Canadian businesses aren't getting into AI as quickly as their competitors around the world. Is that a problem?
Yeah, adoption rates are an issue. Canada's leading in our frontier research on AI, and Canadians should know that. We have some of the best researchers. AI was pioneered here in Canada. Right here in Toronto, Jeffrey Hinton, who's at the Vector Institute, is the godfather. Yoshua Bengio at the Mila Institute in Montreal. You know, he's won what's called the Turing Prize, the Nobel Prize in AI. In Edmonton, Rich Sutton's also won it at the Amy. So we have pioneering frontier AI research, and we have some of the best companies in the world. But Canadians and Canadian companies are lagging on adoption. So using AI to drive productivity, to drive growth. And again, what's the reason? Well, maybe because they're not sure how it will address the bottom line. Canadians like to see the proof. And the truth is now they recognize, and I think you're seeing accelerating rates of adoption because businesses recognize this is a new tool in the tool belt to drive service, to help customers, and governments are realizing the same thing.
One tricky thing for you and administrators, politicians around the world is how are you going to regulate this thing? Because it almost looks like it's going to be impossible to regulate in the sense that it's the internet, nobody controls it.
Well, I think we should just be careful about just saying it's either going to be regulated, like let's try to put a saddle on the horse, or let's just let it run wild, because there's lots of room in between the two. For example, a lot of our existing regulations already work. You know, people think about driverless cars. That is an issue that's coming. We have some great driverless companies that are pioneering it here, but our existing regulations work. You can't just put a driverless car on the road. So we do have lots of existing regulations that are protecting Canadians, that are protecting Canadians' privacy and data, but we will be making sure that you can protect Canadians' data, can protect their privacy. Now, how do you regulate? Well, first, you've got a balance between the opportunity and making sure that we don't stifle innovation and making sure that our companies have access to the best GPUs, the best tools. Businesses out there want to make sure they can compete at the same time as mitigate against the downside risk. And that's tricky. But we are not sure yet the best way to do that. But it doesn't mean it's impossible. There's lots of regulations in Europe and here in Canada on people's data and people's privacy that are the most important things. So companies that are using AI, rest assured that consumers know that their data is being protected. It's not the Wild West out there. But our imperative as a government is to build a sovereign and secure AI infrastructure. And that's really important. That means we've got to make sure we have secure cloud, secure data centers, and building that digital backbone is an imperative for this government.
Can you remind me, it might have been the previous government, I think, put aside $2 billion to build data centers?
Yeah, we have a $2 billion compute fund. And, you know, I know there's an announcement today about some of the companies. Cohere, for example, has got the first big investment, over $240 million of investment in that. So
from the federal government.
From the compute fund. Right,
yes.
So that's part of that fund. So we're allocating part of that fund. We've also got $1 billion set aside to build a supercomputer. So part of that is to invest in companies that are building the data centers and the technology. And that's really why Canada's so far ahead in this, because we had an early jump on this.
Would you say we're far ahead, but RBC warning that our businesses just are lagging? They just have an imagination gap. Is there something wrong with the corporate culture in this country?
I don't know if there's anything wrong. I think you are in the midst of a Gutenberg moment. We have a political upheaval. And so we have two things happening. We have a crisis here that our businesses are facing. Lots of instability, a big political realignment, at the same time as a absolutely hyper-accelerated technological transformation. So those are hard things to juggle at the same time. So how do you do that? First, you have to make sure your core business is safe and secure. You've got to still innovate and invest in the future so you can have the resilience to withstand that. So again, I don't think, and business culture is doing that, but you're right, you've got to lean into the innovation because this is, in some sense, an AI arms race, and Canada luckily has the energy, the frontier research, and the businesses that can not just compete, but can succeed in it. But it's urgent, and that's why the Prime Minister created this ministry, to focus on that.
You think it's like the invention of printing? It's that fundamental for human knowledge.
Yeah, look, I've called this a Gutenberg moment, like when the invention of the printing press happened. And, that coincided with the Reformation and a big political time. And things changed. Look, you and I have, and many people watching, have lived through the first great upheaval, the internet, where we turned information from a scarce resource into an abundant resource, and it radically transformed the business environment. For the last 2 decades, we've been living through that, and new innovations that no one could predict. Now, we're not just transforming information, we're transforming knowledge, right? The ability to think and predict. And that's the second wave, and it's going to have equally transformative impacts, and it's accelerating at a much faster pace.
What's next? Will we see the federal government allocate more cash to this area?
I think the federal government is more laser focused on investing in innovation. We are laser focused on attracting foreign direct investment. And by the way, people are coming to Canada. There's so much interest. Why? Because we've got the infrastructure, we've got the energy, we've got the stability, we've got the right business environment. So you're seeing a lot of investment and interest coming to Canada. But you're also seeing big Canadian companies working with each other to make proof points on innovation.